Your RMD this year is $41,000.
But I didn't touch that account.
If you have a 401k or an IRA and you're planning to claim Social Security the moment you turn 62, I want you to watch these next few minutes carefully. Because those two decisions feel completely unrelated. They aren't. And the order most people put them in is the order that costs the most. Let me tell you about Walter. Walter is 63. He's retiring next year, and by every measure, he did things right. He saved for decades. He never carried credit card debt. His house is nearly paid off. And when he sat down to plan his retirement, he made two choices that felt like the safe, responsible thing to do. First, he decided to claim Social Security at 62. Take the guaranteed money as soon as it's on the table, the way his father did. Second, he decided to leave his 401k completely alone. His advisor told him to let it grow, so he did. Don't touch it. Let it compound. Two careful decisions, made by a careful man. Here's where it goes wrong. At 73, the government requires Walter to start pulling money out of that 401k, whether he needs it or not. And because he left it untouched for 11 years, that required withdrawal in a single year comes to roughly $41,000. That money lands on top of the Social Security check he already locked in low. And it pushes him into a higher tax bracket and a Medicare surcharge tier he never saw coming. Walter didn't make one mistake. He made two decisions that were each perfectly reasonable on their own, and put them in exactly the order that makes them collide. So before you claim, before you decide to just let the 401k ride, there's a question worth answering. Which one are you supposed to touch first? Because for a lot of people, the answer is the exact opposite of what they've been told. That's what this is about. Most people, when they think about Social Security, think there's really only one smart move. Take it as early as you can. 62, the first year you're eligible, get in line. The logic feels airtight. It's your money. You paid into it your whole life, and who knows how long you'll be around to collect it. Take the bird in the hand. I want to walk through why that instinct, which feels like the cautious choice, is often the opposite of cautious. When you claim at 62, you don't just start your checks early. You lock in a permanently smaller check for the rest of your life. Claiming at 62 instead of your full retirement age cuts your benefit by roughly 30%, not for a year, not until you make it up, permanently. That reduced number becomes your baseline for every cost of living raise you'll ever get, for as long as you live. Now, the average retired worker in 2026 collects somewhere around $2,071 a month. That's the number most people are planning their retirement around. But that average is dragged down by everyone who claimed early and locked in the cut. The person standing at the same earnings record who waited got a very different number. And I'll show you exactly how different in a moment. Here's what makes early claiming feel safe. It removes uncertainty. You stop wondering and you start collecting. But retirement isn't one decision made in a vacuum. It's a sequence. And the reason claiming early quietly backfires isn't the Social Security check itself. It's what it forces you to do with everything else you own. When your Social Security is smaller, you lean harder on your other accounts to fill the gap, which means, for a lot of people, they end up doing the exact thing that triggers the problem we're building toward. Before we go further, if you've already claimed early, don't panic and don't click away. Some of this is about what you can still adjust, not just what you locked in. Drop your claiming age in the comments, 62, full retirement age, or holding out. I read them, and it tells me what to cover next. So what does waiting actually buy you? Because if delaying costs you checks now, it has to be paying for something real. It is, and it's bigger than most people realize. Here's what waiting buys you. For every year you delay claiming past your full retirement age, Social Security adds 8% to your check, guaranteed, every year, up until you turn 70. Compare that to anything else on the table. An 8% guaranteed return, adjusted for inflation, that you cannot outlive. There is no bond, No CD, no annuity a retiree can buy off the shelf that guarantees that. The market might beat it in a good decade, but the market doesn't guarantee anything. Social Security does. Delaying is the only place a retiree can still get a guaranteed raise of that size, just by waiting. Let me put real numbers on it, because the gap is bigger than most people picture. Take someone with a strong earnings record, the maximum. If that person claims at 62, the most they can get in 2026 is about $2,969 a month. If they wait to full retirement age, it's about $4,152. And if they hold out all the way to 70, it climbs to roughly $5,181 a month. Same person, same work history, same lifetime of paying in. The only thing that changed was when they chose to start. That's a difference of over $2,200 a month between the earliest and the latest claim for the rest of their life. One thing stops accruing, though. So let's be precise. Those credits only build up until age 70. There is no reward for waiting past 70. 70 is the ceiling. Claim then, not later. Now here's a piece almost nobody factors in, and it matters most if you're married. When you delay and build up those credits, you're not just raising your own check, you're raising the check your spouse may live on after you're gone. A surviving spouse's benefit is calculated on what the higher earner had built up, including every one of those delayed credits, even if that person hadn't started claiming yet when they died. So if you're the higher earner, delaying isn't only your raise, it's the protection you leave behind. If you're married, that changes the math entirely. Think about that before you assume early is safer. So, delaying is guaranteed. It's inflation-proof. It protects the person you leave behind. Which raises an obvious question. If it's this good, why does almost nobody actually do it? Why do most people still grab the smaller check at 62? The answer isn't ignorance. It's what's sitting in the 401k, and what that account is quietly turning into while you're not looking. So, why does almost nobody wait? Because waiting means spending your own money in the meantime. If you delay Social Security to 70, you've got to live on something between the day you retire and the day those bigger checks start. And for most people, that something is the 401k or the IRA, which feels wrong. Everything in you says protect that account, let it grow, don't touch the nest egg. So, people do the reverse. They grab Social Security early to keep from dipping into savings, and they let the 401k sit. Watch what that untouched account is actually doing while it sits. A traditional 401k or IRA grows tax-deferred. That sounds like a pure win. No taxes while it compounds. But tax-deferred doesn't mean tax-free. It means the tax bill hasn't come yet. Every dollar of growth in that account is a dollar the IRS has not taxed, and fully intends to. They just wait, and they've already picked the year they start collecting. That year is 73. Under current law, once you hit 73, the government requires you to start pulling money out of that account whether you need it or not. It's called a required minimum distribution, an RMD. You don't get to leave it alone anymore. The IRS sets the amount based on the size of the account, and it grows as a percentage every year you age. This isn't optional, and it isn't a suggestion. Miss it, and the penalty is steep. We did a whole video on how brutal that RMD math gets. It's worth your time after this one. Here's where Walter's two careful decisions come back to collide. Because he left that 401k untouched for 11 years, it didn't shrink, it ballooned. And a bigger account means a bigger forced withdrawal. That's why his first RMD lands around $41,000 in a single year. Not money he chose to take. Money the law made him take. Now stack it. That $41,000 doesn't arrive into an empty room. It lands on top of the Social Security check he locked in low at 62. Suddenly, his taxable income for the year jumps, not because he earned more, but because the government finally came to collect on an account he was told to leave alone. The small check he took to feel safe is now sitting underneath a large mandatory withdrawal he can't avoid. The two decisions he made separately, years apart, each one sensible on its own, meet in the same tax return, and the collision is the whole problem. That's the trap. Not one bad move, two reasonable moves in the wrong order. Now, at this point, a lot of people say, fine, I'll just follow the standard advice on which accounts to spend down. And there is a standard rule. Almost every planner teaches the same withdrawal order. Spend your taxable accounts first, your tax-deferred accounts like the 401k second, and your Roth last. As a default, it's reasonable. It lets the tax-advantaged accounts keep growing as long as possible. But look at what that default does to the person we've been describing. Spend the 401k second means leave it sitting until you've drained everything else, which for a lot of retirees means leaving it nearly untouched right up until 73. And leaving it untouched until 73 is exactly what builds the oversized RMD in the first place. The textbook order, applied without thinking, walks you straight into the collision. Here's what that collision actually costs, because it's more than just a bigger tax bracket. When that large RMD stacks on top of your Social Security, three things can happen at once. Your ordinary income jumps, so more of it is taxed at a higher rate. More of your Social Security itself becomes taxable. Up to 85% of it can be pulled into your taxable income once you cross certain thresholds. And your Medicare premiums can spike, because Medicare charges higher income retirees a surcharge called IRMAA, and that RMD can push you over the line into a higher tier. Stack those together, and a retiree can hit an effective marginal rate near 40% in that crossover zone, where the next dollar of income triggers tax on itself, tax on more of your Social Security, and a bigger Medicare bill, all at the same time. That's not a penalty for doing something wrong. It's an automatic legal mechanism. Nobody sends you a warning. It just runs. This is where the word backwards in the title earns its place. The intuitive order, claim Social Security early, protect the 401k, follow the textbook and spend it last, is the order that loads the most weight onto that one collision at 73. Doing what feels safe at every single step adds up to the least safe outcome. So let me ask you something, and answer it in the comments, because I'm curious where people actually are on this. Right now? Are you taking anything out of your 401k or IRA before 73? Or are you letting it sit and grow exactly the way we've been describing? There's no wrong answer, but your answer tells you how exposed you are to what we just walked through. Which brings us to the fix, the order that actually diffuses the collision instead of building it. So here's the order that diffuses it. It has a name. People call it a Social Security bridge, and the idea is exactly the reverse of what most people do. Instead of claiming Social Security early and guarding the 401k, you do the opposite. In the years between when you retire and when RMDs kick in at 73, those early retirement years when your income is often at its lowest it will ever be, you deliberately draw down the 401k. You live on it. You spend the very account everyone told you to protect. And while you're doing that, you delay Social Security, letting it grow 8% a year toward that much larger check at 70. Look at what that does to both problems at once. By spending down the 401k in your low-income years, you're shrinking the balance before 73. So when RMDs finally start, they're pulling from a smaller account, which means a smaller forced withdrawal and a smaller collision. And by delaying Social Security, you're trading a temporary gap now for a permanently bigger, inflation-protected check later, the one your surviving spouse may lean on too. You're draining the account that creates the tax problem during the years it costs the least to drain, and you're growing the income stream that's guaranteed for life. Same accounts, same person, opposite order, completely different outcome. Some people take it a step further and use those low-income years to do Roth conversions, moving money out of the traditional 401k and into a Roth, paying tax on it now at a low bracket so it never generates an RMD again. That's a deeper strategy for another day, but it runs on the same logic. Use the quiet years before 73 on purpose. Now I have to be straight with you, because this is where honesty matters more than a clean story. This order is not right for everyone. It only works if you can actually afford to fund those bridge years out of your own accounts. If spending down the 401k early would leave you short, this isn't your play. And the right answer genuinely depends on your health and how long you expect to live, on whether you're married and what your spouse needs, on your other income, and on how big that tax-deferred balance actually is. Someone in poor health with a modest 401k might be completely right to claim early. This is a mechanism to understand, not a prescription to follow blindly, which is exactly why the goal here isn't to hand you an answer. It's to make sure that when you sit down to decide, you're seeing both decisions as one connected choice, not two separate ones that quietly collide 11 years later. Think about what Walter's retirement looks like if he'd known this at 63 instead of finding out at 73. Same savings, same career. He just puts the two decisions in the other order, and the collision never happens. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. The reason most retirees get this backwards isn't that they're careless. It's the opposite. Every single decision, claim early to be safe, protect the nest egg, follow the standard advice, is a careful person doing what looks responsible in the moment. The trap isn't ignorance. It's that the two decisions are never presented as connected, so you make each one on its own, years apart, never seeing that they're going to meet on a single tax return at 73. That's the whole shift. Stop looking at Social Security and your 401k as two separate questions. They're one decision about order, and the order you choose in your early 60s quietly decides how hard the collision hits in your 70s, or whether it hits at all. If this connected two things in your head that always felt separate, do me a favor and send it to someone you know who's about to retire, a sibling, a friend, a spouse, because this is the kind of thing that's almost impossible to fix after 73 and completely fixable before it. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because the RMD side of this, how that forced withdrawal math actually works year by year, is its own video, and it's the natural next one to watch after this. One last thing, and I say it on every video because it matters. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA, and I'm not your financial advisor. Nothing here is personal advice for your specific situation. It's the briefing that helps you walk into that professional's office already knowing the right questions to ask. Your health, your marriage, your accounts, your tax picture, those details decide your answer, and they deserve a real conversation with someone who can see all of them. But now, you know the one thing most people never find out until it's too late to change. It was never about which account to protect. It was always about the order.